Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 25, Chapter 1. Cracking open another one. It's the one from the last. We're getting down to the end of this series, and I'm super excited. Man, these first two chapters already are just cooking. We're already cooking in the first two chapters, and yes, something happened that I should have seen coming, but I think I was too busy worrying about other stuff, and I'll get into my theories why I didn't think it actually should have happened when we get to it, but before we do that, hey, everybody that dropped by for the premiere, hey, chat, hope you guys are doing well. Thank you guys so much for your support and for dropping by, saying hi, giving me support, all your guys' kind words, all that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Last week, we had Sabanatsu with a gifted membership, Orsted Cultist with 13 months. Paramir, I think that's how you say it, with the super. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Inferno Torch, thank you as always for your support. Thank you, thank you. Benjamin Super, and then finally, Sideman with 5 gifted membership. Thank you so much, guys. It means so much to me. But with that said, let's just jump right into it. I think I didn't have any notes last week. I think I had one thing, not really that big of a deal. Oh yeah, when I got to the part where I was talking about the idea of Rudius trying to figure out some way of doing magic without using his hands, because he's talking about the circuitry and whatnot, and kind of losing those circuitry, but yet still being able to kind of supply mana through his feet and whatnot to the armor itself. And I was trying to figure out, okay, is there another way that they can actually do magic? And yeah, it just popped in my head. Oh, that's right. Beast folk technically do that. Beast folk have a sort of magic of their own where they are essentially sending mana through their throat. And Rudius tried to do it, and he said that he figured it out, but it wasn't super effective. But it's okay, that at least shows the sign that you can technically use magic outside of, again, sending it through your hands. So I'm curious if he'll figure that out at this point, because again, Rudius doesn't know how to keep his limbs. Rudius is really terrible about keeping those limbs. Anyways, let's get into this. Chapter 1. Someone notices something amiss. I think everybody notices. At this point, with the previous volume's end and this, everybody's noticing it, which is a good thing. Everybody's on point. In a small tavern tucked away in the second city of Arilo, the second largest city of Behero Kingdom, Sandor von Grander and a young man were having a drink. Why is Sander now there? I didn't know von Grander was his last name, though. So essentially, after Alexander defeated Rudius, he went to the second city of Arilo, and his last name is von Grander, because I don't know of a Sander besides him. Oh, is this where we finally admit that we goofed up, Seven Seas? Is this finally where we admit that we goofed up, Seven Seas? You know, it's funny because I think the only reason I really don't like the fact that they got the name wrong in a way. I mean, it's a translation. You're going from again, katakana or whatever and kanji to essentially English, and so there's certain things that they have to kind of morph to be the same thing. It just doesn't really technically translate directly, but it's I just was more annoyed by the fact that people would shut up about it. I kept telling people, I'm it's literally what they put in the book. I'm not changing it every time it comes up, and I don't want to miss one of them. And then you guys go, oh my gosh, you got the wrong one. It's just I'm going to whatever's in the book. But here, yes, it's finally deciding to change it. So Shandel apparently is Sander. I don't know why. Whatever. Sander von Grander. So you're saying the monkey-faced demon left the second city of Irilil for the capital, then vanished? Yeah, his smoke's supposed to be unique. So I reckon it's true. After that? I don't know. Hey, I swear I don't know any more than that. I'm just speculating, but I reckon that he caught wind that you were after him and did a quick vanishing act. The informant speaking to Sander was little more than a boy, but that boy knew more about rumors of Behero Kingdom than anyone else. Either he was older than he looked, or he was just a pawn for the real info broker. This already makes me wonder, because again, we've established at this point that yes, technically the man god has at least 2 of these rings that change your appearance. And so, I mean, it wouldn't be too far off base that the person that showed up to give them info when they first arrived there was probably, yeah, somebody either working for Geese or direct. I don't think Geese himself would go up there. I don't think he would risk that. But I'm pretty darn sure that, it could have been somebody using a disguise, or it just could have been, again, somebody working for Geese to tell them exactly that information. But yeah, it all kind of ties together. Hey, mister, I got a juicy story, only it'll cost you extra. Sander placed down a silver coin before the kid quickly scooped it up and put it in his pocket. You hear about the devils of the forest? Devils? Yeah, you know the ones. Turns out, they're them Superds. Some foreign adventurers made them angry, so they slaughtered a whole village. Gosh, nasty people who moved in. They say the kingdom's gonna send out a hunting party any day now. I hear tell
The Forest Devils make invincible monsters fight for him. So who knows how bad the fallout's gonna be?
The remainder of his stories was made up of extremely exaggerated rumors. There was nothing to confirm it for sure, but it sounded like someone spread some gossip on purpose. That someone was obviously Geese. Starting to pick up on all of it now. It's all going to be picked up on now.
Anyway, point is, right now they're recruiting for a hunting party. So I figured that monkey-faced demon that you're looking for might be hiding in the ranks.
I see. You've given me a lot to go on. Cheers. Sander paid the informant another copper coin, then exited the tavern. Outside, night had fallen. It was mostly quiet around the back streets of the tavern, but he could hear a commotion.
I want to get this information to Rudius as fast as possible, but it's late.
According to the plan, Rudius was supposed to come back to the town that day. He'd rendezvous with Sander in the second city and then go to the capital for negotiations. The sun had long set, and Rudius hadn't returned. If that were all, Sander wouldn't have worried. He'd assumed that Rudius, being who he was, simply got carried away with talking up the superb village. I think if it wasn't Gal and Alexander, yeah, I think he probably would have talked to the guys and just sticking around for a little bit longer. First things first, let's let the Dragon God know. He returned to his room to share the info. The contact tablet was a nice modern convenience, or he supposed it was the power of the Dragon God. The other day when Rudius used it, the tablet emitted a constant blue glow. Now it looked like an ordinary lump of rock and nothing more.
Are you broken?
He gave it a casual rap with his fist. The part he touched just crumbled away. I kind of wonder if that's like one of those aspects that's like it's super enforced because it's been like infused with magic and now it doesn't have that. Or like literally he just punched it. He's so strong it just freaking breaks. Surely he knows his own strength. Whoa now. His inner voice immediately cried out. He broke it. He's turning into like the comedic relief. Like this whole chapter, he's like, he's the bit now. It had gone dim at some point before he got back, so he chose to believe that it had already been fragile. This is a pickle though. Sander was confident in handling magical implements. In his life thus far, he handled more than your average number of them. He'd also broken more than your average number. And he wasn't confident in being able to fix them. If he couldn't fix it, he couldn't share his information. He worried over this for a few seconds before making up his mind. Guess I'll head back. Perhaps it was different for other people, but he knew that if he was left to his own devices, it wouldn't lead to anything good. He just turned instead to the teleportation circle. There in a basement, Sander looked at it in silence. It should have been ready to use, but it wasn't glowing. Sander's alarm bells rang louder. He was an experienced warrior. He could sense that this was a trap. This was a perfectly crafted dead end. A cramped basement with nowhere to run. It was a location begging for a surprise attack. Entrance blown up, trapping him inside, or perhaps killing him by their own hands. How about you show yourself already? He turned to the entrance. Perhaps they laid in wait for him to knife him in the back. He was used to surprise attacks. I know you're there. He pointed his staff at the exit. He waited. No response. Foolish of them. He'd already found them out. Sander snorted, then walked forward with a light step, like he was going for a nice walk. Anyone who knew what to look for would get chills seeing that power walk. Thus Sander left the basement, casting his gaze, about to catch the moment an attack came. Whenever it happened, he would be ready. He kept it up all the way outside. There, a battalion of soldiers was nowhere to be found. The streets were deserted. When Sander emerged with his weapon in hand, a passerby shot a suspicious look. He set off down the street, getting looks for his weapon in hand. While a buzz of interest swept over the townsfolk, he paid them no attention. He strode through the town gates and out of town. Seeing from his movements that he was no ordinary passerby, the guards let him go out of the town without impeding his departure. Sander got out safely. Even then, he didn't lower his staff. He walked until he could no longer see the walls of the town. When he arrived at the empty plain with good visibility, he let his guard down at last. Without a moment's hesitation, he set off running. He was heading for the superb village. Something was terribly wrong. He wasn't the target, and somebody else was. I really did think someone was there. He didn't deny it. This is totally a moment where they could have had him break the fourth wall and just be like, I knew that there was nobody out there. Like, just yell out loud, I knew nobody was out there. As he remembered what he said back in the basement, he went a little peak. It was a funny bit. The idea of like, and I assumed that he was going to be alone down there. Like, yeah, technically when they took out that teleportation center, basically is what the office was. It's like it's a main hub. Once they took that out, it broke everything. And so there was really no reason for somebody to go down there while he's down in the basement and attack him there. The damage was done over here. Like he kind of puts it. The attack was somewhere else. And this is just, again, the repercussions of it. Now, granted, technically, they could know where all the teleportations are at and have somebody sent to each one to attack whoever goes to use them. But they have no idea. It's a little more difficult to know unless they look into everybody's future, if they've already seen the damage or not. Anyways, goofy little bit there. Him being Again, they're kind of turning him into the comedic relief. Sander made haste to the forest of the superb village and didn't stop for any towns or villages. He hadn't been attacked back at the circle, but he was on guard against an ambush. Whether he was deterring his would-be attackers or there just wasn't any assailants, he couldn't say, but his journey passed without incident. He exited the forest and approached the ravine. When he went to cross, Sander suddenly realized something was wrong. There's no bridge? The stone bridge that Rudius had built had collapsed partway in. It had looked extremely sturdy, but suppose that it had only been a makeshift thing, made with magic in the end. Sander didn't know much about magic, but he vaguely knew that this sort of dashed-off magic bridge was prone to collapse. Interesting that they kind of note the fact that, yeah, like a chunk of it is gone. Like I'm guessing like it goes in and then there's like an entire lost segment before it continues again later on. So he busted like a huge segment out of it, which I was kind of curious about if it was going to be like a full-on collapse. And then for some reason, Gal and Alexander were just kind of like casually walking off the bridge off the other side as it's collapsing underneath them. And they're just like chill walking, like not even caring about it collapsing underneath them. But he uses the other bridge, so that at least implies that there's probably like, you can't cross it anymore right now. It didn't strike him as odd. What caught his notice was the original bridge next to the broken one. There was something on the ground near it. The scabbard of a sword. If his memory served, it was one the regular soldiers of the Imperial army carried. What's this doing here? His alarms were going off again. He knew his own instincts well enough that when something felt wrong, he wasn't imagining it. Besides the whole basement incident earlier. I mean, putting aside that whole incident back there, let's not look at that. Of course, there was times when he read too much into things, but he could trust his gut. Looking around the bridge to ensure he was alone, he slowly began to cross it, until he was partway across, greeted by a familiar sight. Spotched black stains. Bloodstains. He couldn't tell whose, but judging by the color, it was likely human. The blood appeared to have come flying from the broken stone bridge. That's a distance, unless I guess the assumption here is that they're really close to each other. Like, we're talking probably like, 10 feet at the most. Collapsed bridge, scabbard nearby. Sander furrowed his brow as he pieced together a theory. Does that mean Rudius and the soldiers were attacked on the bridge? He set off sprinting. He feared attackers, hemming him in the middle of the bridge. But even now, when he was on the other side, no attackers came. At the end of the bridge, he kept his staff raised for a few seconds, looking for danger. When he knew there was nothing, he set off running again. This dude is like super hyper cautious. It's kind of after how everything kind of unfolded in the previous volume and how Rudius completely left his guard down with those soldiers, which turned out to be, again, Alexander and Gal. It kind of shows you a nice opposite here. Rudius at times can be overly cautious, and it's good. And yes, we always make fun of him saying, rent-free, man, God, and whatnot. Like, especially like the whole situation in Millis. That was a good example there. It's like every 2 seconds he's thinking, who's working for the man God? Who's working for the man God? Is it them? Is it them? Is it them? Is it... And I think that's actually like you can say that it's over too much at times, and some of his actions can often be stupid because of it. But it is a good amount of healthy suspicion about everybody when anybody could be coming to kill you at any moment. Again, the man God wants you dead, and he can control whoever he wants to control, or at least he can control a lot of people. But that whole situation with the end of the volume was like, holy crap! He left the original office open for attack because a lot of that had to do with the fact that he was sucked up into wanting to help Rejerd, and so I think a lot of his judgment was kind of clouded there. But yeah. Logic thinking in that situation, he should have had somebody replace Orsted in defending the office. But no, immediately got Orsted, left the office, left it unguarded. Poor girl sat there alone. And then yes, with this whole situation with the soldiers, he let his guard down so bad with them. And again, it was a lot to do with the fact that he downplays people like Doga. Like he doesn't give Doga enough credit, even though this is somebody that should be with him at all times. I mean, Sander more so because Orsted felt like he could trust him in defending Rudius, but not having these individuals at his side and going off alone with the soldiers is like, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? And this is a nice, refreshing opposite that where like he's literally seeing like bloodstain on the bridge. Alert mode. Who's coming to attack me? Get to the other side of the bridge. Nobody came. All right, what next? He's very like step by step. Who could be there? Check the front. Okay, get out of the town. Anybody here? No? Okay, run. Go to here. Bloodstain on the ground. Check this. Get to the other side of the bridge. Check around. Nobody here? Good. Go to the village. Like he's very step by step in checking for every threat. Again, you could say it's overly much, but again, this is a war. They're in a war zone right here. They're in a war zone. When he knew there was nothing, he set off running again. As he approached the superb village, he entered stealth mode. From afar, he confirmed that no enemy was occupying the village. Then some support warriors came out to greet him. He confirmed Sander wasn't a threat, and thus they entered the village. Sander immediately headed to the residence of a warrior that, while still recovering, he could trust most. Very interesting. I mean, it does imply, like, several times throughout this chapter, like, he totally geeks out about Rijerd. Like, this is this legendary warrior, and he's totally, like, he's totally fallen for him. His heart flutters. It definitely gives us this picture that he really likes Rijerd. Again, technically, Rijerd is a legendary warrior, and he seems to know a lot about him. Which, again, I was assuming was going to be the case. I knew he knew this tribe. Master Rijerd. Rijerd was eating with Rudius' little sister, Norn. But when Sander came running up, Rijerd stood at once, ready to fight. It was a kind of quick shift you only saw in a legendary hero. Sander felt his heart flutter. Doki Doki. He's so strong. What happened? Where's Master Rudius? He left the village with his soldier escort a few days back. I think someone, maybe from the second city, maybe the Earthborn Ravine village, attacked them on the bridge. Rudius is missing. Form a search party. Understood. Rijerd picked up a spear and ran out of the house. No hesitation. I love it. No hesitation. I love that. No hesitation. Rijerd, like, got it. No questions. Got it. Like, even Sander could be lying. Like, again, at this point, it kind of implies that we don't really have, like, a direct connection between Rijerd and Sander, but it's just enough right here. Okay, let's go. If he's lying, who cares? Huh? Norn hadn't followed the conversation and gaped in bewilderment and alarm. Sander smiled kindly at her. Fear not, Miss Norn. Your brother's the right hand of the dragon god. He won't go down that easy. You can count on that. I'm sure he survived the attack and is hiding out somewhere. Have no doubt that I will save him. Okay. With that, Sander ran to the village square, where Rijerd, who worked fast, assembled 5 warriors. We're ready to go. Then let's be off. The warriors, like Norn, couldn't conceal their confusion, but their quick response showed their training. They followed Sander without a single objection. They ran through the forest. A few invisible wolves crossed their path, but the superb warriors quickly put them down. In no time, they arrived at the ravine. When Rijerd saw the unremarkable stone bridge Rudius made, his brow furrowed. There's no signs of a fight. The bridge has collapsed. Sander knew this was a legendary warrior's sight, to see all that at a glance. His heart fluttered again. Again, he's turning into the comedic relief. Suddenly, Rijerd's eyes widened. He ran out into the bridge where the bloodstain was. This is Rudius' blood. I wonder how he can tell that. Like, specifically, he knows, maybe it shows traces of mana or whatnot. I'd be curious about that. So he was attacked here. Rijerd didn't reply. He went further down the bridge. When he exited the other side, he knelt down and stared intently at the ground. Rudius' footprints aren't here. Sander automatically looked into the ravine. There had been an attack on the bridge, no footsteps, which meant he was killed and thrown off? Rijerd was silent, but from his grave expression, he guessed the likelihood was high. Even supposing Rudius wasn't dead, the ravine teemed with earth dragons. Rudius was a powerful magician, but even he couldn't make it out alone. Sander was deliberating on what to do, when suddenly Rijerd crouched down off the edge, lowering his legs over it. What do you think you're doing? That's obvious. I know how you feel, but if we go into the ravine with this lineup, we're not coming back out. It kind of makes it's kind of odd that he, like, literally goes, like, sits down and, like, puts his legs over it like he's gonna, like, slowly go off the edge. I'm like, I just assumed that Rijerd would just, like, jump down the ravine. But I guess technically, if it's, like, literally a cliff face like this, he's gonna have to, like, climb down it, like rock climbing. Rijerd might be a legendary warrior, but down at the bottom was an earth dragon den. They would end up in grave peril if they went. That was a guarantee. They'd be throwing away their lives for nothing. Then what should we do? Sander pondered. It was a tricky situation. In the first place, they didn't know for certain that Rudius had fallen into the ravine. They couldn't even rule out the other two set off to the village carrying him. Slight though that possibility was. Oh. Sander remembered something. He'd set up an insurance so this wouldn't happen. How many sets of footprints were on that way to the bridge? Rijerd glared, as though angry at the irrelevant question. 4. Sander looked around. He saw only empty forest. No trees had fallen. I'm sorry. No earth turned asunder. I knew immediately what he was thinking. No earth torn asunder. It was peaceful. Having confirmed this, he ran to the edge of the bridge, again to check the ground. He saw a single footprint. It was a distinctive one, larger than that of an ordinary man. He turned back to Rijerd. Yep. Like, the moment that he's talking about, like, no trees had fallen, no earth is asunder, I'm like, he's totally looking for signs of Doga. Yep. Looks like the trees are still intact. Looks like Doga didn't get in a fight, so he wasn't involved in the fight itself. Confirm this for me again. You only found Master Rudius' blood, correct? Yes. Well, that's all right then. What? Let's leave Master Rudius for a moment. I expect our enemies are on the way. No sooner than those words left his mouth than Rajerd seized him by the collar. You mean to abandon Rudius? I do not. I give you my absolute guarantee that Master Rudius will return to us. His words were full of conviction that made him strangely persuasive. Rajerd was confused, but he slowly released Sander. I mean, at this point, technically, if it were not for, unless he knew about the box, technically Rudius would be dead if he didn't have the box. So I don't know how he can give so much confidence to this whole situation. He, again, technically, based on who he actually is, or at least who I speculate he is, he should know about the box if he's seen the box. If he's seen the box, he could probably go, oh yeah, I kind of know what that thing is there, but there's no way for him to know exactly what happened to Rudius. Just the fact that Rudius was struck. We'll see. But yeah, he's a dork. He's a dork. Comedic relief right here. But here's the juicy bit. Let's get into stuff that's probably going to take me some time to get through here. Chapter 2. At the bottom of the ravine of the earthworm. I didn't actually change the third person on purpose because I quickly realized this was a certain location, so I don't like to alter those ones. When I woke up, I was in a white place. My body had reverted to the way it was in my past life, a realization that washed over me with a sense of powerlessness. I hadn't felt this in a long time. With it, the feeling of defeat. I'd lost. Rajerd had been the bait, and I'd fallen for it. After beating Vita, I let my guard down and contacted the Peril Kingdom, which let Geese know where I was. I'd end up rolling out the welcome mat for the former Sword God and North God. Thus I wound up in that mess alone, with enemies on both sides. It made me sigh just thinking about it. Right here. Bingo. He's thinking the same thing I'm thinking. And again, it was like a lot to do with the fact that I was reading that whole bit with Sander and how like overly cautious he is. It's like such a stark contrast here. But again, I think he's kind of putting more of pinning the aspect on Vita himself. After beating Vita, I let my guard down. Yes, time span, I think that's the case, but I think he was technically letting down his guard the point where he pulls Orsted over. And again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was so afraid for Rajerd. And I think that's usually the case whenever Rudius gets to the point where he's making massive mistakes. It's always he's flustered about something. We got into that with great detail with that whole situation with the man god telling Rudius to go kill Orsted. I kept criticizing. Everybody's like, but he's not thinking. And it's like, I understand that. But he is making mistakes. Can we not agree that he is making massive mistakes right now because he's flustered? He's making massive, massive mistakes. And yes, anybody that's a fan of Orsted like I am, grave mistakes in that situation. Geese had been watching closely. I hadn't expected to lose the use of all my magic once my arms were cut off from the root. He'd chosen that location perfectly too. Naturally, I couldn't summon version 1 on that bridge. Yeah, that's a good point there. And again, I was questioning why they didn't attack the first time they went across the bridge. And again, that's pretty much because of Doga. And they even confirmed that. They're like, with him there, yeah, it's kind of iffy, but him alone, I could have handled that. They were even themselves noting that Doga himself was a problem in some way. But the bridge is a good point. Rudius is even confirming it here. If I was on that bridge, I couldn't summon version 1. Why? Version 1 is a massive mecha thing. He even talks about, like before, like every time he puts down a scroll for it, it destroys it because it lands on that paper and destroys it. It's heavy. This is a heavy object. But again, it's also a good point there that he loses his footing really quickly. Again, they know the fact if he loses his footing too quickly, because again, he couldn't jump out of there and get out of there. Geese knew that with that armor, he can jump. He must have decided in advance to force a fight in a location like that. I kind of wonder if he knew about the bridge. Like, again, using some sort of look into the future through maybe like Doga or something like that. I don't think that would be the case because Rudius was with Doga when they got that bridge. I kind of wonder how they know about the bridge. Unless specifically all Geese told them was go with him to that village and find a place where he has very little footing. You're going to go across the bridge at some point to go across that ravine. Use that bridge. Oh, Rudius created his own bridge. I wonder if he could break this. Maybe we were to think about that. Could he possibly break this and still lose his footing? Thanks to the system Roxy built, I didn't need to draw out a magic circle anymore. But Geese didn't know that. Right there it's implying that yes, because of the system that Roxy built, he could just press a button And this is implying right here that at least one of the scrolls that's on his little setup that he has is to summon version 2, which I assume that. He's probably going to have one of them is boop, rolls out, and version 2 pops up. Again, my assumption as well is that there's going to probably be other ones that will be for, again, transporting to another location, because he was talking about using 2 scrolls to kind of jump from one location to another, teleport to a short distance. But also, I would assume probably some healing magic too, because he can't do healing magic voiceless. But yeah, I would assume that he probably doesn't know about the fact that that system is built yet, unless he, again, is looking to somebody that was involved with Roxy, or, again, I'm still kind of curious if he could possibly choose a disciple like Roxy, and if he can even have Roxy as a disciple. I'm curious if he can just look into somebody's future, designated as the disciple, but he's not technically bringing them to him to talk to them. He's just looking into their future. Or if possibly he has to have them at his side in the barren land and talk to them or whatever before they can actually see in the future. I don't think they've ever actually established that. Key reason is that he doesn't tip off Rudeus that he's looking into Roxy's future and seeing what Roxy sees, while at the same time being able to do that. Well, those 2 weren't about to lose to me in version 2. It looked like they hadn't anticipated the bridge couldn't withstand the updated version 2 stamping down on it. I suppose there had been an escape route below me. So where was Geese? Had he disguised himself as the king of the Berhero Kingdom? That voice had been different. But we're talking about Geese here. Imitating a voice was within his abilities. Besides, it had been a piece of cake with Man God's assistance. Pity party right here. Sort of warranted. But I don't think that he was disguising himself as the king. I mean, he could have, using, again, a ring. But again, they would have to get rid of the king himself. And again, I think the king is on board. My assumption is that Bodigadi went to the ogre tribe, got the ogre god on board with him to help him and assist him, and then he used his leverage to contact the king, and thus basically through proxy through the ogre tribe is puppeteering the kingdom. Wait a minute though, Sander was suspicious too. Which one? His voice and face and physique didn't resemble Geese, but with a magical implement or magic item, he could have changed those. Maybe he had infiltrated the Asura Kingdom from the start and tied up the leader of the Golden Knights or something. The dude was good at getting information. Too good. So it was very possible. Okay, so he's talking about our Sander. What used to be Shandel. I hate this now. I hate this now. That is actually funny, because that is probably purpose. I'm assuming that, and even with the original Japanese, I'm guessing Rudeus is Sander, and who Alexander disguised himself as, that Sandor? I'm getting confused now. I'm guessing it's probably a play off of that, because he knows who he is. I don't know. Man, it felt like there'd been a lot of machinations lately. It was the same with the Abyssal King Vita, using dreams to mount a psychological attack. Whoa, are you actually a slime creature? I bet that pixelation filter isn't hiding your identity. You were actually a slime all this time. No reply. Asshole, I'm talking to you. Say something. I look like a dumbass talking to myself. Now that I've lost, you can at least show up to gloat while revealing your plans. That's what the bad guy does, so go for it. Tap me on the shoulder and say, "Nice try, but I win. Too bad, eh? Why was he waiting? My fist wanted a final word at least. Go die in a hole. There he is. Holy crap, it's been so long. The last one was just before he went to see the Dragon God. Just before he went to go fight Dragon God, Orsted. Holy crap, it has been 10 volumes? 10 volumes since he's talked to the Man God? That's surprising. Now, I was talking about this a while back, and my assumption was at some point, and I think it was around the time that he was going to the Asura Kingdom and he was going to fight Aber. I think way back there, I had this prediction that at some point he's going to lose a limb, and it's going to be the one that has the crest on it from Dragon God Orsted. And once that's been cut off, boom, he was going to get sucked right into the Man God's presence, and he was going to want to talk to him. But, like I said earlier in this Mushoku Monday, I really honestly thought that there was a possibility that he would never talk to the Man God again. Main key reason why is the Man God has no reason to talk to him. And we sort of got a hint at some point, like with the whole situation with Aldius showing up and whatnot and stopping the whole situation with Roxy. I've always had a feeling that the Man God obviously is kind of like a child. Like he's literally like a man baby, just like Rudeus originally was, which was a lot of why I felt like the two of them might be connected somehow. is that this man god is like a perpetual child. Like he's a just seemed like a very long-lived child. So when things don't go his way, he just throws an absolute tantrum. And so I would feel like with the fact that he's going against Rudius, there's no reason for him to pull Rudius in there to talk to him. He just doesn't like him. He wants to get rid of Rudius. He hates Rudius. There's the only reason he would want to bring Rudius into his presence if he had something to say or if he just wanted to gloat and laugh in his face. Why would he care to pull Rudius in here? Why? There's no gain here. So there was a side of me that was like, even though I had that prediction at some point he was going to lose a limb and boom, man god's going to pull him in. But when I thought about it again, why would he care to talk to Rudius? He has no gain, and he just doesn't want to see Rudius. He hates Rudius. So it's curious that he actually pulls him in here. It makes me kind of wonder, does man god even have control over pulling Rudius? This is a total, I don't think this is the case, but this is a total like left field theory here. Does the man god in some cases not have control over when Rudius will be in his presence? Is there almost a side of it that Rudius at sometimes wants to see the man god just subconsciously, or a possibility of Rudius going into the presence of the man god is almost like, how do I explain this? It's almost like Rudius himself subconsciously or somebody else pulling Rudius into the barren lands in some way, unconsciously, in order to preserve him and protect him. Just like the whole situation with Orsted, pulling him in there to preserve him while Nanahoshi tells Orsted, come heal him, whatever, and then he's able to survive. A temporary place for Rudius' soul to be before he comes back to his body. Again, with Orsted literally killing him, boom, into the barren lands. And then Orsted revives his body, soul comes back into there. This could be possibly not the man god's doing. Because again, I don't see why the man god would want to talk to him. Go die in a hole. Already did. So, what's the story, man god baby? Your pixelated mosaic filter's not working too well. Feeling down?
Every time you do something, my future changes.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I can see all the way into my future.
Yep, I know. You have future vision. For 3 people at max, right? Huh? Does that include you? Can your third disciple even see their own future?
3? I could see more than that. I just can't take my eyes off my own future. That's why only 3.
Well, there's a confirmation there. He apparently can see more than just 3. And again, this kind of eludes the idea of like, right now, he's doing 4. But the way that's almost worded almost feels like he's saying, I've locked into my own future here, and I can see 3 others up to that point. But I can't let go of this to see more. Like almost alluding to not just 4, but even more than that. I can see more than just 3. I just can't take my eyes off the future. That's why only 3. So it could technically be 4, but that also could allude to the idea that he almost can't let go of this to see even more, like beyond that. Like almost like there's these slots here. He's locked this one in so he can't see beyond those slots. I think it's probably 4. But I would see him saying I could see 4, not necessarily only 3. Anyways, meaning it takes most of your power to see your own future.
It's like my future's red. There was a moment where it went dark.
Whatever, paint it black.
At first, it was just Orsted. Orsted's nothing. He's not my enemy. I would never lose to such a simple-minded moron.
Moron? Okay, Orsted's a bit thick at times. Now, right there, Rudius is kind of speculating, and he doesn't confirm it, but that does technically make sense that he is applying it to power. In the idea that, yes, he has, it's not slots. Like, here's slot 1 disciple, slot 2, slot 3, and then I'm going to put mine here and lock out the rest of my capability or my 4th slot. It's literally putting it as, like, I need this much power to see my own future, and thus I don't have enough to give out to any more than just 3. That actually makes more sense, that without using all of his power to see his own future, he could technically see much more people. But he's too worried about his own future. And it makes sense. He has to keep tracking to find out when did I hit that point in which I've basically won again. He's constantly looking at it because it's his impending doom, which technically does lead itself into making a man god himself a very intriguing character in the sense of what would go through somebody's mind if at all times you have like this monitor right there that is showing you how you're going to die. And if anything you do will might alter that, but it's going to make it even worse in some cases. Where, okay, so this guy doesn't like me. Maybe I'll be nice to them or something like that. And then it shows you dying to even more people. And you're like, crap, I hate this. Okay, let me change this bit right here. Okay, maybe I can get rid of the guy. And it gets worse and worse and worse. I can see it driving somebody absolutely insane. And I can make an argument for that almost being the reason why he becomes so into the idea of destroying other people's lives. Why did he go so far out of his way and laugh at Geese's face after literally leading him into his own village's doom? Yes, for his own benefit. In a lot of those cases, I see it so that he can break what's tying somebody down and thus making them usable only by you, making them a devoted disciple. But there's probably also an aspect of it that where he sees his own doom over here and he wants to cause doom for other people and amuse himself at their misfortune. It gets my mind off of my horrible future when I see how your future is destroyed. I wonder. More on, okay, Orsted is a bit thick sometimes. Like, when he didn't say anything about the Superds. Not that I'm one to talk.
In that moment, a man appeared beside Orsted. A man I didn't know. Total blank. I think he wasn't of this world.
There, right there. That pretty much confirms Narahoshi's boyfriend, I think.
Since then, things have gotten a little darker.
Very interesting. Again, indicating that initially, Orsted was the only one that showed up in his future. Orsted shows up, he's a simple man. Orsted, and yes, I agree with that. If you put the original Orsted from the very beginning when we met him, he was a very simple, straightforward person. And he hasn't swayed too much from that. He still technically has a very simple mind the way that he goes about things. But Rudius has over time changed that. But still, technically does make sense. The first Orsted that came to him was so easy to trick, so easy to manipulate, so easy to beat. Then suddenly out of nowhere, some other person showed up. And I can't see that person. And yes, that does kind of allude to what we've seen with the murals. This idea that suddenly out of nowhere, somebody else showed up and there's no appearance to them. They're sort of like a man god character, which kind of leads to that whole thing there, but they have no appearance. They're black. They're just pitch black. They can't see them. It doesn't seem to give it any kind of form. Total blank. I think he wasn't of this world, which is kind of curious. Because he's not of this world, he couldn't see his form? Interesting. Is it that he was doing something to block his form from the man god? Or is it a similar case to Rudius himself, where he can't see his form as well? Oh, are you talking about Narahoshi's boyfriend? What's his name again?
They soon increased. A girl. Since then, my future has been dark and quiet. Every time you do something, Orsted's allies increase. Every time, my future grows darker. Now, it's all black.
Cool. So, what I've been doing wasn't for nothing.
Oh, it was. I'll make it nothing.
That's nasty. Whatever. If I'm already dead, nothing I can do about it.
If you die, there's still time. This creative future only came about because of one guy. I can overturn it by killing humans with strong fates. That's what I've done all this time.
Okay. every time, and this is why I kind of miss the visits with the man god, honestly, because it feels like every time he visits the man god, it's so cryptid. Like, with Orsted, it's a lot of cases there's always like juicy bits in like the deep talks with Orsted because he reveals like a whole bunch of stuff about the world and whatnot, and I always eat up all that stuff. And there's some times where it feels like it's almost overriding what we've heard before, or there's cases where Orsted doesn't want to tell Rudius the full truth, obviously. But with the man god, it's always like cryptic insights into what the overall plot is. Again, even Rudius is picking up right here. Narahoshi's boyfriend? What's his name again? Note, the man god doesn't respond. Interesting. Now again, he does say that he seems blank. He doesn't know who this person is. It's implying that man god does not know who this person is, which makes sense. He's not going to meet him until he's dead. He doesn't know who this dude is. And again, that makes sense because if he technically shows up in the future and the man god is looking into the future, He doesn't see the beginning of this person arriving. He can't. He's not going to know when this person shows up. He's just going to know them when they finally show up in time. And he arrives there in front of him. So he has no clue the hell he is. And again, it does imply the idea that there's a chance that he just can't even see him. Now, it can be the moment they arrive, Orsted gives him a crest or whatever to put on to protect himself, just like he did with Rudius, to protect him. So that could be possibly why he can't see him, but it's always implied the crest itself is blocking his powers from seeing him through his disciples and whatnot, seeing the future. Is it's a blur, it's a space that he can't see into. Not necessarily something that would affect the man god when he's in his presence. But yeah, very interesting that he doesn't acknowledge Nanahoshi. He doesn't acknowledge Rudius asking about her boyfriend. Again, this is one of those odd things that has always been, why hasn't the man god ever talked about Nanahoshi? The assumption is that he just doesn't see Nanahoshi as a threat. He's that stupid he doesn't see Nanahoshi as a threat, and thus he's never been looking into her. He's just too busy worrying about Rudius because all these children come from him. I gotta get rid of him. And Orsted's at his side. Gotta get rid of Orsted. Not looking at anybody else that's helping Rudius. He's always going at the root. He never cares about all these other ones. All this other stuff, the water that is nurturing the roots, the soil that's nurturing the roots, the sun that is feeding it. He's always worried about the root itself, which is Rudius. Foolish. You could definitely say it's foolish. But yeah, then a girl showed up. So we had the initial one, which was, again, Orsted. Then this other guy, which I'm assuming is Nanahoshi's boyfriend. Then a girl. I doubt it's Nanahoshi. It could be, but a girl. My assumption is that the girl will be the trigger point in which he doesn't like Rudius, which would be a girl is going to be one of the, it's probably Lara, it could be Lara, it could be Lucy, or possibly just one of the other children's children. It could be a grandchild or whatever. My assumption is probably going to be Lara. Since then, my future has been dark and quiet, which would be his death, probably. Every time you do something, Orsted's allies increase. That would make sense. You're going to have technically, and this girl could technically be that as well, Rizur's daughter. You're going to have Rizur's daughter. You're going to have every child of Rudius or grandchildren or whatnot that decide to back Orsted, and it just growing and growing until it's all black. And finally, right here, very interesting to see that Rudius finally goes, whatever, I'm dead. But at least I got you. I like that mindset. At least I got you. But no, I guess this whole point here where it doesn't seem like he's responding to Rudius at all when he's asking about Nanahoshi, asking about Nanahoshi's boyfriend, what is his name again, blah, blah, blah. Technically, a lot of this is Rudius in his mind is thinking about this stuff. It could be cases where, he's not really asking the man god. He's just in his own head talking. But I think it's kind of implying here that the man god's just sitting there sulking in a corner as Rudius is talking to him. Because he said, I think earlier, he said something like, are you a blob? Which could just be his face and whatnot, just being like this blob of a human that just stands there that he can't see a structure to it. But almost kind of imply the idea that, like, I can imagine the man god just over off the side, just kind of huddled up. He looked like a blob. He's just mad. But again, Rudius right here, just like with Orsted, assuming he's dead. I'm dead anyways. And he's like, nope, you're not dead. I want you to be dead. And again, based on how this conversation is going, I don't think the man god wants him there. I don't think this was his choice. He didn't make this choice. Rudius just showed up. I think it's a self-preservation thing. I think Rudius' soul, seemingly, possibly, is going to the barren lands to preserve itself before coming back to a body that's not dead. Now right here, if you die, there's still time. This creative future only came about because of one guy. I can overturn it by killing humans with strong fates. That's what I've done all this time. Which, yes, technically alludes itself to everything he's been doing in the past. Like, everything in the past that we've seen with, like, Laplace and stuff like that. Anybody with a strong fate, I've killed them. And I'm going to kill you, too. He's been doing this for a while now. And Rudius is his next target. He specifically says, this creative future only came about because of one guy. The assumption there is Rudius. He sees Rudius as the root cause. I need to get rid of you. I don't necessarily think it would be Orsted, because Orsted's always been on his mind, but Orsted has never been the true threat. Because again, Orsted alone he could take. Rudius has been his main priority right now. I can overturn it by killing humans with strong fates. That's a weird way of putting it, but I'm assuming he's talking about Rudius, and possibly anybody that is tied with Rudius that he is, again, creating children through. Well, that he's been doing it the whole time. Do you want me to beg for my life? Press my head against the ground and plead? Just please spare my family. Probably impossible at this stage, though, given the circumstances.
Just die. Die. Die.
Die? What are you, 8 years old?
Die in hell, Rudius.
Listen to me, damn it. Rudius opened his eyes. He felt terrible.
Die.
What are you, 8 years old?
Die hell, Rudius.
Again, there's a side of me that almost wonders if, again, the man god's always been kind of a weird, an oddity, just weird. And again, it almost feels like a lot of his stuff is it's all for his own self-pleasure and amusement and the horrible things that he does to people. And again, the fact that it really finally clicked for me right here where he technically always is looking at his death. That can warp the hell out of somebody's brain. The thought of your entire existence for hundreds of years is staring at your own. Well, technically, it's only been this short period of time. Right now, where he's seen his own death, him going after individuals in the past makes me believe that at times he has seen his death before. It's just this is right now is where Orsted's coming after him because all the times before has failed. Now Orsted's here. He easily took him on, but now he sees his death again. But I can imagine somebody seeing their death in front of their eyes for so long has to warp the hell out of him. But again, I do kind of think there is an ongoing hint that the man god's like a god baby. he's the god. He's the baby god. He's the baby god. Just throwing an absolute tantrum. Rudius opened his eyes. He felt terrible. Having someone tell you to go die in your face really puts you in a rotten mood. Yep. I feel you, Rudius. I feel you, Rudius. Some comments, dude. Like, holy crap. People are so... It's like the internet. The internet in general. People are so nasty times. Like, dude, really? In the face, though, I think that's different. I've had some confrontations with some nasty individuals, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't really bode well. Still, for all that, he told him to go die. He hadn't told him, I'm going to kill you. There's a lesson in there about how the man god relies on people or something. He didn't do his own work. All he did was issue orders on high. Bastard. Yeah, I mean, that's the assumption at this point. We're pretty much solidified at this point that the man god doesn't do anything directly. He always tells other people, not go die, saying go die. He can't directly affect Rudius. He can't directly control him. He's got to get somebody else to. Rudius thought he was dead for sure. The upgraded version 2 was extremely tough, but he was still flesh and blood. He'd blacked out. There was no way he could have survived the impact from that high. Yet, he was alive. Something had cushioned his fall. He thanked Dada Paul and Mama Zenith for making such a sturdy son. Sitting up, it was dim around him, maybe a cave. It was then that he realized that his arms were back. He was pretty sure Galfalion had sliced them off. He didn't have self-healing function as far as he knew. Whoa, what the hell? His hands were black, a lustrous jet black, like obsidian. Yeah, that immediately clicked that point. I mean, when he first got up, I'm like thinking, okay, probably, again, I probably assumed that Orsted had saved him and then used healing magic on him. Or if the case of Doga catching him, he was probably going to have to activate, either run to Orsted to have his limbs healed, or if the scrolls were of healing magic, they would heal him. The moment it said obsidian, my mind immediately went to, well, my initial, I did have a crazy theory right here. I have these habits where when I'm reading through it, I'll stop for a moment and just try to think it through. Like try to really kind of theorize on what's actually happening in the lines, which I know bugs the hell out of some people, but I love this stuff because it brings to light some really funny ideas here. When I seen the obsidian, my mind obviously went to demons. Again, technically, Etoff and Bodigadi. Now, I had a crazy thought process that what if Bodigadi had saved Rudius and then ripped off his limbs? Because he's done that before, remember? Way back in the University of Magic, he gave the Magician's Guild one of his arms so they can study it. They were studying the immortality that was in his arms, whatever. So right here, like, yeah, there was a thought of me that had, like, what if he ripped off 2 of his limbs and just, like, attached them to Rudius so that it stopped the bleeding or whatever? Because it kind of implied the idea that the arms themselves were, like, things that can survive and live. I wonder whatever happened to that arm that he left the Magician's Guild. I wonder if he took it back with him. But yeah, that was one of my theories. The other theory was that it was Etov. I don't know if I was really at the time thinking about the box. I don't remember that part. They moved without any issue, and it felt like the nerves were intact. He ran his eye along them. The black limbs were affixed to his shoulders, like plants rooted in soil. It was a bit icky. That doesn't sound pleasant at all. I mean, you've had prosthetics and everything. This should be nothing new, because you keep losing your damn limbs. Also, someone had taken him out of his magic armor. The leg sections were gone too. He was down to his undies. His body was wrapped in bandages, and blood seeping from the sides. He'd been even given first aid. That meant whoever saved him couldn't use healing magic. He also had this person to thank for his arms too. He looked around and saw his clothes folded in a pile. On the top of them was a severed arm. He figured it was probably his arm. The dragon god's bracelet was on it. Good it was that one. Good he got that one, and that one didn't get eaten by the dragons. When Rias dragged himself over to his arm, his body was rocked with a wave of pain. He said a healing spell to close his wounds, then took the bracelet from his severed arm before putting it around his new black arm. He wondered if it was still working. Wondering where he was allowed, he stood up and produced a flame to illuminate his surroundings. He was in a cave about 5 by 4 meters. Some sort of fabric was spread across the back of the cave where he was lying. Was it a cloak? He headed for the cave entrance to ascertain his location. The cave curved, but he quickly saw light. At the exit, someone was standing. Someone with massive broad shoulders and armor to match. As Reese drew near, he turned and slowly raised the visor of his helmet. It was a familiar face. Doga. Uh-huh. Doga boy. I love how Reese finally has to eat his fucking words. For all his trash talking of Doga saved his ass. Time to fess up, Rudius. Just advanced here. Stupid. Doga best boy. Uh-huh. You saved me?
I saw a bridge fall. Jumped in, right away. You were unconscious. Tried to carry you, but the armor was heavy. I took it off. Brought you here. Bound your wounds.
Doga saved him. He jumped in the bottom of this ravine. In thought, Reese apologized for saying that he didn't have a presence and was useless. Apologize out loud, damn it. Well, thank you. You saved my life. Sorry for going off alone. I should have been more careful.
Sandor's orders.
Doga gave a weak smile. Even if he was just doing as he was told, he was looking out for him. He was a good guy. Reese blamed himself for being a moron, thinking he'd been looking out for those 2 soldiers. Were these arms you too? Reese held up his arms. Doga shook his head.
When I found you, you were like a cocoon. I opened it. The cocoon turned into arms.
A cocoon that turned into arms? If the arms were the cocoon, what the hell was a cocoon? Reese was carrying something that made arms attached to him? As Reese looked at the arms, Doga looked apologetic. Yeah, about this point, this is where I was guessing the box. This is the point. I have my notes right here. This is the point where I'm like, yeah, it's the box. It's obviously the box. Now, there was a side of me that I had like a small inkling that it would have been something that Roxy had implemented in the armor, but there's nothing that has been applied so far that she had something that she was masterminding that could do something like this. Again, the only expectations I had was Bodygotti replacing his arms or the box. It's the box! What's in the box?
I found one little arm. I looked, but no other arm. Might have been eaten. I'm sorry.
Oh no, don't sweat it. Reese could grow it back with healing magic. If the black ones came off, that is. That's true. It technically needs to be exposed. I mean, I don't know how that would work growing into these weird rooted in things. Where are we?
Bottom of a ravine. The most steepest bit.
Right. How much time has passed?
Don't know. No sun here. 2 or 3 days, I think.
Doga moved to one side and let the light hit Rudius' eyes. It was faint and dim, bluish in hue. What looked like glowing moss and mushrooms were glowing thickly outside the cave, illuminating the surrounding area. That wasn't all. Outside, blocking the entrance, was 3 corpses. They were animals with carapaces like dinosaurs. Earth dragons. 3 whole earth dragons lay dead. Advanced here! Advanced here! Advanced here! Did you do this?
Uh-huh. To protect Rudius.
Reese noticed scarlet blood smeared on Doga's great axe. Earth dragon blood, he guessed. He'd seriously taken them down alone? Way to go, Doga. Reese might have underestimated him a tiny bit. The North God Kalman had said as much, actually. You're a North Emperor. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Still learning. Master says I kill monsters good.
North Emperor. Damn. 1 under. Like, he literally right at the cusp. again, and North style, they allow multiple North gods. He literally could end up becoming a North god. Damn. And I bet you Kalman wants him to. I'm still learning. Master says I kill monster good. All right, Rudius thought. What dumbass said Doga was useless? Ariel sent a fighter who knows his business. Fine, it was me. I'm sorry. I underestimated him. Dumbass Rudius. Right. You're really something. Uh-huh. He smiled happily at the praise. What about Sander? There was a long pause.
I can't say.
Right. Rudius had a hunch. He'd grill him when he got back. That's interesting. And again, this might be because when they first met up with Rudius at the office, that Sander was like, don't tell the boss. If he doesn't know, well, let's keep it a secret, whatever. It could be Doga's like, yeah, if boss doesn't want him to know, I'm not going to tell him. North God. All right, we should get out of here. Before anything, they had to get back. Rudius had two powerful enemies that were in disguise, the Sword God and the North God. Rudius would keep calling Galfalion the Sword God, as his abilities were still intact. That's a really good point. It's kind of funny, that aspect of like, he's no longer the Sword God. It's like, who cares? When it comes to somebody is your enemy, who cares if somebody beat him at some point and took his title? He's still that caliber. It's not like suddenly out of nowhere, he's no longer strong. I mean, yes, give him the title of Emperor, but still, it's like, I would still see, if I was in Rudius' shoes, I would still call him a Sword God. I would still call him the Sword God. And again, that goes back to that whole argument about titles really mean nothing. Like, people get so stuck on the titles, they really don't technically mean anything. Even though earlier I was saying, oh my gosh, he's actually Emperor. They don't technically mean anything. They're just sort of a way of gauging. And yes, it's really for competitive reasons, mostly. Again, they kind of point out this idea that at some point, it just puts a target on your back for powerful people to come find you because they want your title. Besides, there was second and third North gods. And it wasn't like anyone's going to arrest him for calling him that. It's like the title bullies come up and show, Rudius, we heard that you called Galfalion the Sword God. Actually, we're going to have to take your license. It was a possibility. No one knew they'd try to take out Rudius. If they really wanted to hurt him, then a hunting party would destroy the superb village. They could handle a hunting party, even if they came in hundreds. But it was a different story if those two hid inside the crowd. Rudius had to stop them. Very good point there, and I don't think I actually really kind of thought about that. Again, to my theories that I was getting into with the later parts of Volume 24, is I was very curious as to why they didn't turn right around and go back in there and just kill Orsted. If Orsted's his target, and he wants Orsted dead, go in there. Yeah, the obvious answer there is, well, they didn't have their weapons. They had to get their weapons. They could have easily stored their weapons nearby. They could have had their weapons pre-stored in the village nearby. Why wouldn't they just store them there, take out Rudius, go get the swords, go kill Orsted? Bam, done. It makes sense to technically get in with this crowd of ogres and humans and yada, yada, yada that are all in that hunting party, get to that village, and while they're all attacking the village, they can spring out disguised and hit their targets amongst a bunch of people that most of the warriors are not going to think are that much of a threat. Oh, there's an ogre, ogre number 55 right there. Oh, all right, getting ready to kill him. And then it turns out it's Galfalion. Done, you're dead. That's all assuming that Orsted would even be there. I guess the assumption there is, or at least the assumption that Geese might have if that's his plan, is that if he knows that Orsted needs the child of Rajerd, he'll protect Rajerd, and Rajerd's going to protect that village. I don't know that Geese knows that yet. I don't know how... I guess the assumption here is that the girl that the man god sees is Rajerd's daughter. Because how would he know that he needs to kill Rajerd, except for based on the past, that at some point Rajerd had to take down Laplace. And so he's assuming that Orsted is trying to help Superds and Rajerd and wants to take them down. Again, it all plays into what he was doing originally by having Rajerd come to the central continent and go up to the north, extract the disease, yada, yada, yada. So I guess it all makes sense. It makes sense that Geese would know that. First, take me to where I fell. I want to get my armor. There might still be some usable scrolls, too. Uh-huh. They got the magic armor relatively quickly, killing 2 Earth Dragons along the way. Doga took them down in one hit. Yeah, one hit. He stood his ground as the Earth Dragon rushed him.
Then with one swing of his massive axe, its head went flying off. Now that was a guy you could count on. Thinking back on the fight with invisible wolves, he seemed to be weak against sneak attacks, but he couldn't be bested in sheer strength. While Doga was in great shape, the magic armor was deeply cut up. The scroll veneer was in ruin, the bundled up scrolls cut clean in two. Not only that, but his blood was splattered across the veneer. It was all clogged up. It was useless like this. Seemed even the magic armor couldn't protect you from sword god level enemies. The sword must have been fragile. It punctured through his armor, then snapped in half. From the blade fragment, it didn't look like anything special. Galfalion was supposed to have a lot of magic swords, but he must have left them behind to blend in and escape Orsted or Cliff's Eye. The thought of what would happen if he used his own sword wasn't pleasant. Yeah. Again, you got some massive plot armor right here, Rudius. You don't think about it too much. This is useless now. Rudius had no choice but to abandon the scroll veneer that Roxy had made him. After she worked so hard on it, he'd come back to get it later. It's destroyed. It's in shambles. It's tore up. It got blood all over it. I'm going to come back for it because Roxy made it for me. The armor itself would still move, though. Not in perfect shape, but it had one of the arm parts, and the legs were undamaged. Even so, not being able to use summon scrolls was a blow. Rudius would have no match for the North God or the Sword God without version 1. When they got back to the superb village, he'd have to pop back to the office to bring a spare. Well, if he had time. And if the temptation worked. He doesn't know about the other part. When Rudius detached the scroll veneer from the magic armor, the sword tip impaling it fell to the ground. With it, a box. With it, his plot armor. With it, his plot armor. There'd happened to have been a space inside the veneer, so Rudius stored a box in it. It was about the size of a dictionary, and engraved with devilish patterns. The kind of box that curses you when you opened it. The box I got from Etov? This is a box that he was told to open if he was in a desperate situation. It was when the sword hit the box that it had snapped. Rudius could see a weak indent the blade had left in it. Hesitantly, Rudius opened the box and looked inside. There was nothing. It was empty. Something was written on the inside of the lid. The black flesh of an offshoot of the immortal demon king Etov. When in peril, release it, and it shall protect you. Yield with care. Yeah, again, like I said, plot armor. I just happened to have a little space for this box to go into, and I put the box inside there, and that's exactly where he hit me, and it actually shattered the sword and saved me from being split in half before I fell, and it just happened to open up, and then it opened up, and these arms came out and saved his butt, cocooned him, and replaced his arms. Being able to cut off all that blood that's gushing out of these limbs. It just happened to be there. This thing, it's all plotter. But again, to my point that I made in the last volume, again, I was questioning why didn't Galfalion just cut his head off? Like, this is a guy that in a split second, gone. Rudius went to go touch his belt. Gone. He went to go grab, like, the moment that pain hits you, in that time, before he can get his arm, like here, gone. Gone. That is split second. You blink and your arm's gone. That's how fast they are. Gone. Gone. Head's gone. Why? Why not? So, anyways, it's a plot armor thing. Like it all kind of plays out like plot armor. And yeah, I do argue with the case of Galfalion and Alexander right there. It's probably more of a fact of like, God damn, this dude's not even that strong. Oh yeah, he was right. He's super weak. Like they're just downplaying Reese at that point. They're overly confident about their situation. We got him surrounded. He's dead to rights. Let's just discuss this. But yeah, my own counterpoint was that yeah, there is an element here about destiny. That destiny is technically plot armor. That's kind of an interesting thing that Refugian has created with this story is the idea that destiny is technically plot armor. It's the idea that Rudius is always protected with like these stupid things that just happen to happen. Doga just happened to be there. The cocoon happened to be there. What Etov gave him turns out to be exactly what he needs for this exact scenario. It's all plot armor, but it is also destiny. But anyways, that aside, interesting that it says in the side lid, you have to open it to find the writing that tells you that this is an offshoot of Etov, that if you release it, it will protect you. Wield it with care. You have to open it, which technically would be releasing it, right? But that's what it warns you. But yes, when you're in peril, it shall protect you. Wield with care.
Yeah, will with care, and it being an offshoot of the Immortal Demon King Etoff, that's sus. That whole bit right there is super sus. Yes, it is interesting that this is what I assume is Etoff has literally taken, I'm assuming probably at some point when she was like wrecked, like destroyed, that maybe somebody put it into a box and then they kept it. It kind of makes me wonder if possibly Etoff's right-hand man, I'm blanking on his name right now, if he possibly just stored some of her flesh, maybe after she got harmed one time and decided to keep it, or if this is something that she had stored for the sake of something like this. Like, I might want to give this to somebody as a token of gratitude or whatever, or maybe she's like cut off a limb and said, here, stick this inside the box and give it to Rudius. That could possibly be it. But what kind of concerns me is the fact that it says wield with care. I would assuming that's talking about the flesh itself, which makes me kind of wonder if this might be something that could backfire on Rudius. Like the thirst for fight that Etoff has, can that come through the arms itself? Where she might want to attack something if he gets in front of something that she doesn't like. So that kind of runs to my brain, like, who could Rudius possibly run into that Etoff does not like? Petagus. Because I'm assuming at this point we're contacting Petagus real soon here. Somebody is going to arrive at the Superb Village, and Rudius is going to be like, yeah, the 7 great powers things right there. Probably Zenoba himself, because he's looking for one. He has a whistle. He's probably going to run into that same 7 great powers monument on the way to the Superb Village and use it there. I'd be curious, because the only person I could think of Rudius get in front of that will with care might blow up in his face is going to be Petagus. That he goes up there to the Petagus' floating fortress. I'm assuming they'll probably know those arms are probably Etoff's and not want him come in there. But I could see him totally just, his arms go crazy the moment he sees Petagus. It's going to happen. Anyways, Rudius looked down at his arm. Was this what the arm was? Rudius was pretty sure that he hadn't opened it, but maybe, with Galfalion's attack, it sensed that Rudius was in danger and protected him from the fall, then parasitized his arm and staunched the bleeding or something. Yeah, that had to be it. Rudius faced east, kowtowed, and thanked the violent Demon King from the bottom of his heart. Lady Etoff, thank you. Arigato. Lady Etoff. Etoff-sama. Arigato. Etoff-sama. Arigato. Rudius now has acquired Etoff Armakun. No one replied. Etoff would still be on her way, but if they seen each other, he'd give her a nice bottle of something. Which makes me think the arms responds to that thanking later on. Over there. It's over there, Rudius. It's over there. I like that even though it's a detached arm, later on it literally seeks alcohol. Sort of. Right, let's get back. The fight was approaching. Rudius had to get home fast. At least, that was the big plan. Turned out, they couldn't climb the cliff face. Don't climb cliff's face. Sorry, it's a stupid joke. Rudius had used earth magic to climb a bit of the way, but when they left the area with the mushrooms and the moss, everything went dark. They were attacked by swarms of earth dragons with no good footing. To top it all off, they used magic. Earth lances stabbed from above, below, even from the wall itself. An absolute nightmare. In the end, they had to retreat. See all these freaking lances shooting everywhere. Nightmare. Rudius tried all sorts of things, using a catapult to launch them to the top in one go. Tried to use earth magic to hide them as they climbed. With everything, the earth dragons messed it up. They were unexpectedly clever and ruthless. Their only safe haven was the area with the mushrooms. Maybe because they didn't like the place, or it wasn't their territory. Some followed them, though, so it wasn't like they were physically incapable of going there. What to do? You know, Doga, I'm impressed you made it down here.
Uh-huh. Not many attacked on the way down.
Huh. Hang on. That makes sense. The Earth Dragon's senses were dulled to anything above them, but alert to anything below. Rudius considered using air effect magic to blast them all away, but they would get caught up in the rubble. The ravine was wide and deep, and the Earth Dragons could use earth magic. Even if he took out dozens, it wouldn't make a dent in their numbers. Rudius didn't want to use a huge amount of magic, in case a fight with Kalman and Gal was still to come. Rudius felt he was dithering. Meanwhile, their assassin's blade might be coming bearing down on the Superb Village. There was also things that could have been exposed. Zenoba's location, at minimum. They could have gotten him already. Rudius was itching to get going, but had to slow down. Rushing wouldn't make things better. For some reason, when he looked with his eye at distant sight, the Earth Dragons were still watching them as they climbed down. Yeah, they kind of allude to later on, there's like thousands thousands of these things, which is freaking crazy. Which, yes, is even interesting in itself, is like, he even mentions it later on. It's like, how the hell are these things surviving? Yes, there's bugs and stuff down there that apparently are feeding them, but that couldn't feed this many of them. It's got to be a high concentration of mana they're feeding off of. That's my assumption. Let's see if there's somewhere with fewer Earth Dragons, yeah?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
They started walking, path illuminated by mushrooms and moss. It wasn't only Earth Dragons that attacked them. They contended with human-sized bugs that looked like praying mantises and centipedes. Maybe the dragons survived by eating the bugs. When an Earth Dragon tumbled off the cliff, it was swarmed by bugs. Perhaps it died up on the cliff wall. Their prey was down here, and it was rare for anything to come from above. It made sense that Earth Dragons only paid attention to things below them. There was an odd food chain specific to this ravine. Yeah, it feels very crafted, especially when you imply the fact that they were technically led here. This path is easy to walk on, huh? It was unexpectedly smooth. Some areas were blocked off by mushrooms or rock that had fallen from above, but it was very flat and easy to navigate. Reese felt he walked a similar path before.
Uh-huh. Redworm jaw is the same.
Oh, that was it. The sight of Orsted's heartwarming, awful memories. That moment I became a donut. It did feel the same as the Redworm's upper and lower jaws, as well as the road to the Sword Sanctum. Does that mean someone made this? There weren't any monsters on that road. That meant someone had made this path, then called the Earth Dragons. But it was apparently Laplace that called the dragons to the central continent. Laplace could have made this path too, but why? Reese had no way of knowing. He was looking for a place to climb up, not an answer to historical mystery. There might be a spot with rocky terrain that prevented dragons from nesting. No, Reese, we want no. Stop, go back. Seems like it's trying to connect something here. I don't know what this could mean. He's saying the path for the Sword Sanctum up there. This ravine, possibly the lower and upper jaw. I would assume it's just probably paths that just was created by Laplace, like just maybe carved into the world itself. It could be these are like, again, some sort of sign of a ley line or something like that, implying a transfer of magic. But I can totally see it being a case of trying to create an ecosystem for the dragons themselves. I mean, quite possibly in order to create a barrier for the humans and a place to store something, which could be creating this forest, something that could be used for later on. Essentially creating a barrier for future use, similar like the whole situation with the Begric continent and the teleportation ruins. Possibly hinting at the idea there being a teleportation ruins somewhere in that area, which I think Reese would know about for the sake of getting there quicker. I don't know. Or Orsted would know about to get there quicker. There might have been a spot with a rocky terrain that prevented dragons from nesting. He'd been checking with his eye, but the ravine walls were full of holes. That made him worry about structural integrity. Nearly every hole had an Earth Dragon living in it. 1,000, maybe 2. Damn! It didn't seem like enough food down at the bottom to support that many. But in this world, it wasn't unusual to see monsters in numbers that didn't line up with the prey on offer. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with just being fed by mana. Like the whole situation with the teleportation labyrinth. It's like there's a whole bunch of those creatures down there. Why? What's feeding them? Mana. He could possibly use that info to find a way up. But how? It was just a pain getting out after falling in. He was told not to fall in the ravine. But did he listen? No. Yeah, that is kind of a funny aspect there. It's not necessarily, like, Rudius's biggest threat isn't necessarily falling in and the Earth Dragons. It's just getting the hell out.
Rudius.
Enemies? Rudius readied himself, but Doga pointed off to one side. There was nothing but a wall there. No, it was in the shadow of the mushroom. A hole. There was holes here and there around the bottom of the ravine. But this hole was a bit different because of the stairs. It had a staircase. It led downward. The next second, Rudius's arm moved on its own accord. His right hand pointed at a hole, like it was telling him to go in. Lady Ettoff, is that the exit? Ettoff's offshoot didn't speak. but the arm went on pointing. I guess it is. Lady Ettoff, is that the direction? Why, yes, that is exactly the direction to go.
Yes, it's the exit, you stupid.
It'd be the deeper voice.
Yes, it is, you stupid.
Okay, there's two things here. Yes, as Reese goes in there, he kind of recognizes the bottles. And there's a side of me that thinks that Ettoff's offshoot here is literally telling him where the booze is. Like, she can sense where the booze is. But I think he implies they're all dried up. And they're technically bottles that were used for another purpose. But it's like, there's a side of me that kind of wonders if the offshoot is so her that it just wants a drink that it draws him to a place with liquor. It senses the bottles. But yeah, there's the other thing that's like, okay, So Etof's been here. Etof has literally traveled here. Again, yes, technically she was involved with like that war and whatnot, and she could have easily had come over here as part of an attack. But knowing specifically this ravine and this location kind of makes me think that we're eventually going to get possibly an explanation from her when he next runs into her about why would you know about that little cave there? Why would you know about this liquid and how it's used to hide people from the Earth Dragons? Which, yes, this whole contraption down here kind of adds to my theory earlier about why these things are here. That could have been possibly a civilization that was hiding under these dragons to protect themselves. I guess it is. It didn't look like they'd find a place to climb. Plus, the ravine didn't go on forever. It would probably lead to a dead end. Turning back to search the other direction would take time too. Shall we see what's down there?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say, What the heck? He agreed without hesitation. Maybe he sensed something in the staircase too. At the bottom of the staircase was a massive altar. It was a vast place, smothered with mushrooms and moss, supposed by 2 pillars decorated with engravings. There was a dais of quarried stone, and the wall behind it was adorned with a finely engraved fresco. The thing it depicted might have been a dragon. There was a whole lot of different things crammed into the design, but it was hard to tell in the gloom. Still, Rudius had the feeling that he had seen something like this before. Is this a ruin left by the Dragon Clan? That was it. This place looked a lot like the teleportation ruins. What's more, the engravings looked like things Rudius had seen on the floating fortress. That meant there might be teleportation ruins here. Even if there were, Rudius wasn't sure he could count on them. Where would it end up taking him? Rudius just wanted to go straight up. Yeah, that's true. Like, he could totally luck and find some... I mean, it would get him out of there. But if he gets teleported to, like, the Beggar continent, unless he, really quickly realizes, oh, there's this teleport over here that will take me over to Renault or whatever, and then get back to the office, like, it's still going to be, like, a lot of side tangent stuff he's going to go into. I just want to go up. I want to go up. Which makes you wonder why he doesn't just make another teleportation stone. I guess he technically doesn't know. He could figure out where exactly the high mana sources is, but I guess he might not have his notes, because it kind of implied the idea that he literally creates the pattern for each teleportation, and then he makes a copy of it or whatever, and then he's having to engrave that into the location it's going to. And so there's going to be a slight alteration that he needs some sort of note as to where he's teleporting to. And he might not have those notes with him. He was getting ahead of himself, though. As far as he could see, there was no rooms other than the one with the altar. The Etof hand wasn't pointing that way. It was pointing towards the fresco and the shelf below it. Thinking of Etof's awful face, he wondered if he could follow her lead. Uncertainty grabbed at him for a second, but his legs were already moving. With the Etof hand still pointing, Rudius went to the shelf. On it was several bottles, cloudy, with open lids. There was also a cloudy crystal ball set on the shelf. There better not be booze in these. Picking up a bottle, it was engraved with a dragon pattern. Zenoa could probably tell him what it was worth, but it was empty. Okay, what do I do with this? Etof's hand didn't reply. Instead, it reached out. It went straight past the bottles for the cloudy crystal. It rested on top of the crystal ball, and then with that, control returned to Rudius. Rudius wasn't sure what this was all about. He had bottles, a crystal, and an altar. It was like an adventure game puzzle. I just love that. There better not be liquor in here. Again, I just literally came in here just because you thought there was liquor in here, and you're like, okay, look to the drink.
Rudius, there.
Doga was standing behind him, pointing at something above Rudius' head. Rudius looked up and saw a blue glow coming from the top of the great pillars, holding the altar. No, the pillars weren't glowing. Something that glowed blue was seeping down from above. This crystal sphere, or possibly the whole altar, was a magical implement that leaked blue water. Only, looking at the light, Rudius couldn't help but be reminded of the moss and mushrooms around them. Okay, so what's the deal with the water? Rudius wondered if he had to drink it. The color liquid didn't look healthy. There were bottles here, so maybe he had to use the water somewhere. Maybe he was filling the bottles and pouring it into a contraption. Then the contraption would move, and a door would open to a legendary sword. Too bad Rudius didn't need that right now. No. No, it's like, it gets into it with the mural and everything like that, but there is a side of me that kind of wonders if this is all kind of connected with the baptism sort of thing they did with Arus, with Petagoose and all that kind of stuff. This kind of glowing water and whatnot, and this all being this magical implement, it being seemingly dragon folk ruins, that all this stuff might be connected somehow.
Just maybe.
Doga pointed to the fresco. There was a huge image that depicted people and earth dragons. Maybe it was set up so the blue water flowed out when you moved the crystal sphere and activated the magical implement. The blue light threw the whole picture into relief, showing the river of blue water. At the top was an altar, and a person was collecting blue water. Then the person poured it on the people around them. They all then took swords and spears and went after the earth dragons. They were hunting them. Based on a quick look at the fresco, this water helped them hunt the earth dragons. There were letters written in the corner of the picture too, but Ruiz couldn't read them. They looked a little different than the dragon writing that he had seen. Oh, hold on. It then occurred to Rudius, the earth dragons didn't come down to the floor of the ravine. They had blue moss, blue mushrooms, and now blue water. Maybe people had lived here once, and those people used the water to drive off the dragons, who didn't like the substance in the water. The same substance was in the blue moss and the mushrooms. Plus, looking at the fresco, the people attacked the dragons from behind and from beneath. Even though the dragons were primed to notice that, they possibly couldn't see things that gave off this blue light. That would explain why they rarely came to the ravine floor. If they poured it all over their bodies, they might not be able to see them. Want to try it?
Uh-huh.
Reese hadn't explained what he meant, but Doga grunted like it was obvious.
Yeah, I've already figured out.
Yeah, let's go. Took you long enough, Rudius. Doga's like figured it out like 5 minutes ago, and he's like,
Okay, fine, figured out. Thank you.
not long after, they stood atop the ravine. They escaped. Feels good to be a free man. They left the cave, covered in blue water. Then they made an elevator of earth magic to lift them up slowly. The earth dragons did take note of them, but didn't react, either because they couldn't see them or because they didn't register as food. They just stayed stuck to the cliff wall, pushed up against one another and not moving. It was barely an hour after that they saw the dark sky. It was nighttime. Stepping off at the edge of the ravine, for some reason, the moonlight was making Rudius emotional. We did it. Rudius slapped Doga on the back. He nodded happily.
Uh-huh.
I like happy Doga. It makes me smile. It had taken a while, but they escaped. Now they had to get back to the superb village right away and tell them about the two soldiers. And that is chapter 2. This little last bit is interesting to me. So again, the implied aspect here is that Laplace had brought the dragons over to the central continent. And it implies the fact that this ravines and whatnot, they were all created at some point by somebody. So it's implying that these were areas that were created and the dragons were brought here, or possibly the dragons themselves found themselves nesting there. But the question is why this mural? That's the oddity there. Why is there this drawing about this magical implement that was created for the sake of creating this water for the sake of hunting the dragons? Unless at some point, and again, it's a lot of stuff that's etched and whatnot that looks like dragon folk had wrote it. Why are the dragon folks like actively going after the dragons unless this is something that was brought from the dragon world? Like it's something that an altar or something that was brought from over there. We used to hunt dragons over there. We hunt them over here. Yada, yada, yada. It just seems odd for them to purposely go out of the way to draw this for the sake of this is the thing that you create to kill the dragons. It almost makes it like it's a history book more than just an actual, like, a user's guide. Basically a user's guide. The image depicted people and earth dragons. At the top was an altar, and a person was collecting blue water. The person then poured it on the people around them. Then they took up swords and whatever and then went to kill them. So they actually were living down here? That's my assumption, that the people were finding an easy way to kill the dragons, and they lived down there and would go up to kill the dragons to feed off of them. And they never left this ravine, ? Or was this particular altar moved down here at some point? It has staircases and whatnot, so I don't think that's the case. But it implies that people at some point were living in this ravine, which is kind of interesting. But I would still imagine that somebody had to have created the altar for them at some point. Again, I could assume that it was probably Laplace. At some point went over there and created it for the people. Just to experiment, trying something out, and create it for the people to be able to survive down there. I feel like this is possibly a hint at something later on, but we'll see. I don't want to sit here and try to think on it too much. We'll eventually get there. But yeah, that's chapter 2. Super interesting. Looking forward to where it goes from here. My assumption at this point is that, again, Rudius will probably go back to the village with Doga. They may have already dispatched. My assumption right now is that Sander is for sure like working with everybody to get things kind of established. So I think when Rudius gets up there, or kind of insinuating a couple days kind of going by, when they get up there, it's probably going to be like they have the place like like fortified. Everybody's like on high alert for what's to come and who's to come in there. But I imagine that Rudius and them are going to get in there. I would assume that Zenoba's probably going to get there pretty quickly. And again, I think he's going to probably check in with Petagus, or at least tell Rudius that he's going to go check on Petagus to see if he can get Petagus' help. Roxy and Edis, I wonder if they're going to be able to make it back in time, because they were like literally on the coast. Because I think for sure Geese is going to want to start moving quickly, like get things moving quickly.
But honestly, I think the best move for them to do right now with what happened with Ruiz right there is I would have hoped that Sander would just get them to move. Like, obviously, we had the soldiers show up there in order to see if they can create some sort of peace with Beryl Kingdom. And the fact that they attacked Rudius right there, the assumption there, and he's assuming already the enemy is coming, I would be like, you guys, we got to get out of here. Like, let's go. Like, we're moving now. And yes, moving the entire village out of the Beryl Kingdom is going to be... That's going to be quite an effort, especially in the northern area there. Again, this is like a very cold area. And yes, we've already established that teleportation's gone there. I'd assume that Orsted can move very quickly to create new teleportation for them to another location, or he would know where the Seven Great Powers monument is and contact Petagus in order to help them. But, again, Petagus ain't going to help this. I wonder, will this be the moment... which kind of annoys me a little bit here. Could this be finally the moment that Petagus puts aside his own dislike for the demons? That when Zenoba gets there, or maybe before he even gets there, Orsted has a way to get there. Either Zenoba or Orsted is going to contact Petagus. We have to get these people out of here. They're about to be attacked. We need to save these people's lives, and we need Rajurd's future child to help us with the fight against Laplace. Would Petagus, for the person that helped him, possibly saved his life, would Petagus shelter the Superb? Temporarily. Would he temporarily shelter the Superb? And maybe possibly, again, having Zenoba playing to him as well. I think that could possibly be a way to get those people out of there. Now, again, it could all turn into being, yes, they're back here in the village while Rudius in front is fighting back the oncoming forces that are coming. But still, it kind of makes me wonder if they might work to pushing to get Petagus to shelter them. And again, they point out that freaking thing, that monument, so it's gotta get it used. Anyways, that's it. I'm gonna call it there. We'll see what comes up next, but I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. As always, thank you guys so much for stopping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. As per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. You guys have no idea. It's your guys' support that keeps this going, keeps the lights on. Without you guys, this doesn't happen. So thank you guys so much. It means so much to me. But yes, where's my book? Until the next Mushoku Monday of this volume that I can't see the cover yet. I'm not looking at it. Like I said before, I can see the cover. I just don't look at the cover, if that makes sense to people. It looks an awful lot like a poster of a Star Wars. Again, I don't know who's where and what, but it has that kind of structure in the middle that I'm like, is this like a Star Wars reference? It kind of has that little pose going on there. I don't know who's standing there. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to know. Is that Rudius standing there with his little Star Wars pose? Is that somebody else? Is that Body Gotti? Young Body Gotti? Until the next Mushoku Monday. Y'all take care. Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek, the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation. We're glowing thick. We're glowing thickly. We're glowing thickly. We're growing thickly. We're growing thickly.